Here we're going to talk about weighted voting, which occurs in situations where some voters carry more weight than others. This might happen in a situation where some stockholders have more shares than others, so their vote counts more. It could happen in a professional situation where certain positions entitle that person to more weight in their vote than others. Let's look at how a weighted voting situation would be set up. When we're given a weighted voting situation, it's going to look something like this. And we're going to have Q, which represents the quota. This is the number of votes that are necessary for a motion to pass. Then we're going to have individual voters. This is the first voter and however much weight they have. The second voter, indicated by how much weight they have. The third voter, indicated by how much weight they have. All the way down to the last voter, which we might call the nth voter. So we have a quota, and then we have a series of weights listed, each of those representing a different voter. So, for example, looking at this weighted voting system, we can see that our quota is 13, and we have 4 voters. We have a 10-weight voter, a 5-weight voter, a 4-weight voter, and a 1-weight voter. Now we'll look at some examples that show some of the terms that are really important when we discuss weighted voting. The first term we're going to look at is a dictator. A dictator has a weight that is greater than or equal to the quota, and the others cannot pass a motion without this voter. Let's take a look at an example of this situation. In this weighted voting system, we have a quota of 20. We have 3 different voters, a 20-weight voter, a 6-weight voter, and a 3-weight voter. We're looking at this to see, is there a dictator in this setup? Well, notice, in order to pass a motion, we've got to have 20 worth of weight voting for the motion. Well, this voter right here has enough weight to pass a motion all by themselves. So if their weight is greater than or equal to the quota, that's a condition of being a dictator. The other condition we have to check is, do these other 2 voters have enough weight to pass a motion without that 20-weight voter? Well, if they were to form a coalition, which is a group of voters together, they would have a total weight of 9. But the quota is 20. So they would not have enough weight to pass a motion without the 20-weight voter. So this other condition is satisfied. And sure enough, this 20-weight voter here in this particular situation is a dictator. The next term we're going to look at is veto power. For a voter to have veto power, it means that their support is necessary to reach the quota. Or said another way, the sum of all the other voters is not enough to reach the quota unless they have this voter on their side. Let's look at an example. In this example, we can see right away that the quota is 30. We have 3 voters. We have a 19-weight voter, a 15-weight voter, and an 11-weight voter. And we're trying to decide if any of these voters have veto power. The way we want to start checking for veto power is look at the highest weight voter. That's the one that's most likely to have veto power if any of them are going to. So we start out by examining this 19-weight voter to see, does that voter have veto power? Well, let's see. If they were against a motion and the 15-weight voter and the 11-weight voter were for a motion and they wanted to form a coalition, they would have a combined weight of 26. That's not enough to reach the quota of 30, so yes, this 19-weight voter does have veto power, because if they're not for a motion, it's not going to pass. It's possible that more voters have veto power, so let's take a look at this 15-weight voter and see if they have veto power. Well, if the 19-weight voter and the 11-weight voter want to form a coalition, they would have 19 plus 11, which is 30, and 30 meets the quota. So you can meet the quota without the 15 weight voter's support. So the 15 weight voter does not have veto power. And then we don't need to check the 11. We can see real easily that the 19 and the 15 would have enough to reach the quota. The only voter that has veto power in this system is the 19 weight voter. The final term that we're going to look at is known as a dummy voter. This is the one that's typically the most difficult for students. A dummy voter never impacts the outcome of a vote. They're never necessary to reach the quota, and if they're removed from a winning coalition, that coalition would still reach the quota. Let's look at an example. First, we'll examine this voting system. We can see that the quota is 16. Now we're looking for dummy voters, somebody that could never impact the outcome. Well, if we're going to reach the quota and we start looking at coalitions that could make it, well, 12 plus 10 would reach the quota. That would be 22. And 12 plus 2, that would not reach the quota. So the 2 voter had no impact there. The 12 wouldn't have been able to pass it by themselves. Adding the 2 voter didn't make a difference. The 10 plus the 2 doesn't reach the quota. So notice the 2 voter had no impact because the 10 wouldn't have been able to pass it by themselves. They aren't able to pass it if they add the 2 in. And then finally, if we have the 12 plus the 10 plus the 2, and this is the part where it gets hard for students, we've got 24. That does reach the quota, so the 2 voter did have an impact. Well, wait just a minute. If we were to remove this 2 voter from that coalition, the 12 and the 10 voter are able to pass this without the support of the 2 voter. So here the 2 voter doesn't have any impact. They aren't able to pass a motion. Their support is not necessary for a motion to pass, which is what makes them a dummy voter. So let's put this all together into one problem. In the given voting system, determine the following. The voting system we're given is 13, 10, 5, 4, and 1. First question asked is, what is the number of voters? Well, the number of voters are here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 voters. The next question says, what is the quota? Well, remember, the quota is always that number there. So the quota here is 13. In order to pass a motion, you have to have the 13 for a total weight in order for a motion to pass. The next question is there a dictator? Well, when we're looking for a dictator, we want to start with the highest weight voter and see if they meet those conditions. Well, remember, a dictator has to be able to pass a motion by themselves. Well, this highest weight voter I've got has a weight of 10, and my quota is 13, so I don't have a dictator here. No, I do not have a dictator. The next question says, do any voters have veto power? Do any voters have veto power? Well, when I want to consider veto power, I look to the highest weight voter first, and then I look at the other voters and I say, could they pass a motion without that 10 weight voter? So if I put the 5 plus the 4 plus the 1, and I add all their weights together, if they make a coalition and they all vote in support of a motion, that's a total weight of 10. Well, in order to pass a motion here, you need a weight of 13. So that would not pass a motion. So the 5, 4, and 1 cannot pass a motion without this 10 weight voter. So this 10 weight voter does have veto power. Now let's check the 5 weight voter and see if they have veto power. Well, if the 10 and the 4 were to form a coalition, just those two, you'd be able to pass a motion. So the 5 weight voter is not necessary to pass a motion, so they do not have veto power, and we can stop checking after that because the lesser weight voters aren't going to have veto power either. So do any voters have veto power? Our answer to that question is yes, and it is the 10 weight voter that has veto power. Finally, let's take a look and see if we have any dummy voters. what we want to do to find out if we have any dummy voters is we want to look at the possible coalitions that could pass a motion. So let's see what could pass a motion here. None of the voters can pass a motion by themselves, so we know that's not the case. Well, the 10 and the 5 could pass a motion, so neither of them is a dummy voter. If we have the 10 and the 4, they could pass a motion. The 10 and the 1 would not. So this one weight voter could be a dummy. Let's see what else we've got. If I put the 10 with the 4 with the, or excuse me, let's be a little more organized here. If I put the 10 with the 5 with the 1, that would pass a motion, but the 1's not really necessary. What if I have the 10 with the 4 with the 1? That would pass a motion, but here again the 1 is not necessary to get to my quota. Next we could look at, well, what if I had the 5 plus the 4 plus the 1? That's not enough to pass a motion. So here again, the 1 voter didn't matter. And then I guess the last coalition that could pass a motion that I could consider would be if I have the entire group voting in favor. Well, that's everybody, and that's certainly enough weight to pass a motion. But here again, the 1 weight voter was not necessary. So it's never necessary to include the 1 weight voter for a motion to pass. So do I have any dummy voters? Yes, I do. The 1 weight voter is a dummy. Let's look at one more example with the same list of questions. The number of voters. How many voters do I have? Well, I can count those up right there. I have a 21 weight voter, a 20 weight voter, and a 4 weight voter. So I have a total of 3 voters. What's my quota? That's the number over here. So my quota is 23. Is there a dictator? Well, remember, to find if there's a dictator, first look at the highest weight voter. They don't have enough weight to pass a motion by themselves, so no, I do not have a dictator. Do any voters have veto power? Well, let's see. If anybody's going to have veto power, first we'll check this guy right here and see if they have veto power. If the other voters formed a coalition, would they have enough weight to pass a motion? That would be 24. Sure enough, they have enough weight to pass a motion, so the 21 weight voter does not have veto power. And if the 21 weight voter does not have veto power, then we do not have anybody with veto power. Finally, we have to look and see, do we have any dummy voters? Now your first instinct might be, wow, these two have an awful lot of weight, and this 4 weight voter doesn't have very much. There's a decent chance that they're a dummy voter. Well, don't just use that to answer the question. Actually, look at coalitions that could pass a motion or might not. Here, if I want to pass a motion, certainly if I put the 21 and the 20 together, that's going to be enough to pass a motion. And if I put the 21 and the 4 together, 21 and the 4 together, hey, that is enough to pass a motion. And if you look at this coalition, the 21 couldn't do it by themselves. They needed the support of the 4 weight voter in order to pass it, which means the 4 weight voter can impact an outcome, which means the 4 weight voter is not a dummy. So we do not have any dummy voters here. Make sure to check to see if you have any dummy voters. And the way to find out is look at the coalitions that could pass a motion and see if that voter is necessary. If they're necessary in a coalition to pass a motion, then they are not a dummy voter.